The sandwich tasted like cardboard, but Ray Castellan ate it anyway. He sat on an overturned fuel canister in the narrow gap between docking bays 7 and 8, where nobody ever came because the lighting had been broken for 3 months. The station administrators did not care about dark corners anymore. They did not care about much of anything since the new trade routes opened up and left orbital station Gamma 7 to rot in the void. Ray chewed slowly and watched a piece of trash tumble past in the artificial gravity. His lunch break would end in 12 minutes. Then he would crawl back into the engine compartment of a Tuluvian cargo hauler and pretend the owner would actually pay him this time. Pretending had become his specialty over the past 2 years. Something moved near the waste recycler. Ray looked up and saw scales. Green and bronze scales attached to something small and thin. The creature emerged from behind the recycler with careful steps. It was no bigger than a backpack, walking on 4 legs with folded wings pressed against its sides. Ribs showed through the scales. One wing had a tear in the membrane. Ray had seen dozens of alien species working station maintenance. This one looked reptilian, maybe one of those scavenger breeds that lived in the walls and ate electrical wiring. Except this one was not trying to run away or attack. It sat down 3 meters from Ray and stared at him with golden eyes that seemed far too aware. "You lost, little guy?" Ray asked. The creature tilted its head. Intelligence flickered in those eyes. Real intelligence, not animal instinct. Ray looked at his sandwich. Synthetic protein between 2 slices of reconstituted grain product. He had 1 more in his lunch bag for dinner. His paycheck was not coming for another week, and even then it would barely cover rent on his maintenance closet of a room. The creature did not move. It just watched him with those hungry golden eyes. "Yeah, I know the feeling," Ray muttered. He tore his sandwich in half and tossed 1 piece toward the creature. It snatched the food out of the air with reflexes that seemed impossible for something so starved. The sandwich vanished in 3 bites. Then the creature did something strange. It lowered its head until its snout almost touched the deck plating. A bow, a gesture of respect. "You are way too smart to be a wall lizard," Ray said. That he pulled out his second sandwich and split it the same way. This time he stood up and walked closer before setting the food down. The creature waited until Ray stepped back before eating. Slower this time, savoring it. Ray sat back down on his fuel canister and pulled out his water bottle. He poured some into the cap and set it down. The creature drank carefully, golden eyes never leaving Ray's face. "I'm talking to a lizard about my problems," Ray said to himself. That is a new low. But he kept talking anyway. About the divorce that took everything except his toolkit. About the engineering job he lost on Kepler Station when the company downsized. About being 34 years old and eating garbage sandwiches in dark corridors because he could not afford anything better. The creature listened. Actually listened, head tilted, and eyes focused like it understood every word. 15 minutes passed. Ray's break had ended 10 minutes ago, but his supervisor barely checked anymore. The whole station was falling apart in slow motion. Finally, Ray stood up. "I have to get back to work. Try not to let anyone catch you. Station security has been talking about pest control sweeps." The creature stood as well. It walked forward on delicate legs and reached out 1 small clawed hand. It touched Ray's boot for just a moment. The gesture felt significant somehow, like a promise or a thank you that went deeper than words. Then it turned and disappeared back behind the recycler. Ray walked back to the docking bay feeling slightly less alone than he had an hour ago. A stupid feeling getting attached to some random station creature. But the memory of those intelligent golden eyes stayed with him through 6 more hours of repair work. That night, in his tiny quarters, Ray lay on his bunk and stared at the ceiling. Water pipes rattled in the walls. Somewhere 3 rooms down, someone was arguing in Brelin about unpaid debts. The station hummed with the sound of slow decay. He thought about the creature, about the way it had bowed, about the intelligence in its eyes that in the morning, Ray decided he would bring extra food. Whatever that thing was, it deserved better than starving in the walls of a dying station. They both did. He did not know that the creature was watching him through a ventilation grate above his bed. Did not know that it had been watching him for 3 weeks, studying him, testing him. did not know that he had just passed a test that would change not just his life, but the fate of entire civilizations. All Ray knew was that tomorrow he would share his lunch again with a hungry stranger. It was a small thing, a simple thing, the kind of thing most people would not even think about. But sometimes the smallest acts of kindness become the hinges on which whole worlds turn. Ray bought an apple. It cost him 3 credits he could not afford to spend, but he bought it anyway from a station market before his shift started. Real fruit, grown in a hydroponics base somewhere, not synthesized in a food printer. The vendor looked at him like he was crazy for spending that much on something he could just eat himself. The creature was waiting when Ray arrived at his usual spot between the docking bays. It looked healthier already. The scales had more shine to them. The ribs did not show quite as much through the skin. "Brought you something better today," Ray said, sitting down on his fuel canister. He cut the apple into pieces with his pocket knife and set them on a clean rag. The creature approached slowly and began eating. It made small chirping sounds between bites. Musical, almost like contentment. Ray ate his usual cardboard sandwich and watched. I looked you up last night. Station database does not have anything matching you. Either you're some species I never heard of, or you're really good at hiding." The creature paused mid-bite and looked at him. Those golden eyes seemed amused somehow. "Yeah, you are definitely not a normal wall lizard," Ray continued. "Too smart, too graceful. The way you move, even half-starved, there's something noble about it." He told the creature about his ex-wife. How she said he never had ambition, never wanted anything more than fixing engines in nowhere stations. How she was probably right. How he used to dream about piloting ships across the galaxy, but settled for repairing them instead because it was safer, easier, less likely to end in disappointment. The creature listened and chirped occasionally. Somehow those small sounds felt like understanding. 20 minutes into his lunch break, heavy footsteps echoed from the main corridor. Ray turned and saw a Brexian cargo hauler stumble into the alley. The alien was massive, nearly 2.5 meters tall, with 4 arms and gray skin that smelled like alcohol even from 5 meters away. The Brexian spotted the creature and his eyes went wide. "Holy void," the Brexian slurred. "That is a WYRM. A baby WYRM." Ray stood up slowly. "It is just a hungry animal. No bother to anyone. No bother." The Brexian laughed. "Do you have any idea what those scales are worth? What collectors pay for WYRM parts? That thing is a fortune sitting in your lunch spot." The Brexian pulled a plasma cutter from his tool belt. Not a weapon exactly, but it would burn through flesh just fine. The creature scrambled backward and pressed against the wall behind Ray. It was trembling. Ray could feel the vibration through his boots. Something hot and protective flared in Ray's chest. He stepped between the Brexian and the creature. "Put that away. Just walk off and forget you saw anything. Move aside, human. This is not your business. I am making it my business." The Brexian took a step forward. Ray was unarmed, untrained, and about half the alien's size. His hands were shaking, but he held his ground. Behind him, the creature made a low sound, almost a growl, but Ray could hear fear in it. "You are really going to fight me over some animal?" the Brexian asked. "It is not some animal. It is a kid. A hungry kid, and I am not letting you hurt it." They stared at each other. The Brexian raised the plasma cutter. Ray's heart hammered against his ribs. This was stupid. This was going to get him killed over a creature he met yesterday. But he could not move. Would not move. "Ray," a voice shouted from the docking bay entrance. "Where the hell are you? The Toluvian hauler is leaving in 10 minutes, and the port thruster is still offline." Ray's supervisor. The interruption broke the tension. The Brexian lowered his plasma cutter slightly and grinned. "Lucky, but I will be back, human, with friends. You cannot guard that thing forever." The Brexian turned and staggered away. Ray stood there until his legs stopped shaking. The creature emerged from behind him and pressed against his leg. It was still trembling. "You need to hide," Ray said. "Somewhere better than the walls. That guy's going to come back, and he will bring others." The creature looked up at him. It chirped once, a sound that somehow conveyed refusal. That Ray's supervisor shouted again. The Toluvian hauler job would be gone if he did not move now. 200 credits he desperately needed. But looking down at the creature, Ray made a decision that he knew was foolish. "Come on," he said, quick and quiet. He grabbed an empty parts crate from the docking bay storage. The creature understood immediately and climbed inside. Ray sealed the crate and carried it through the maintenance corridors, nodding at the few workers he passed like he was just moving supplies. His quarters were only 3 corridors away. Inside his tiny room, Ray opened the crate. The creature emerged and looked around at the cramped space. 1 bunk, 1 storage locker, 1 desk. No windows because maintenance workers did not get windows. "It is not much," Ray said, "but it is safer than the walls." The creature chirped softly and climbed onto Ray's jacket, which was draped over the desk chair. It curled up there and closed its golden eyes. Ray looked at his chronometer. He was 15 minutes late to a job he could not afford to lose, sheltering an apparently valuable creature that would bring serious trouble, making enemies of cargo haulers who would not forget or forgive. Everything about this was a terrible idea. But watching the creature sleep peacefully for the first time in who knows how long, Ray could not bring himself to regret it. Some things were worth the trouble. Some things mattered more than safety or credits or common sense, that he just hoped he would survive long enough to not regret that philosophy. 5 days changed everything. The creature grew, not slowly, but noticeably. By the 2nd day, in Ray's quarters, it was the size of a large dog. The bronze and green scales took on an iridescent quality that shifted colors in different light. The torn wing membrane began to heal. The creature moved with increasing grace and power, no longer the half-starved thing that begged for sandwiches. Ray named it Pip because of the chirping sounds. Pip seemed to approve, making that musical sound whenever Ray used the name. The name was stupid and simple, but Ray had never been good with fancy words. He spent credits he did not have on better food. Real protein, fresh vegetables from the hydroponics bay, even some Toluvian spice crystals that Pip seemed to love. His own meals got smaller. His rent was already 2 weeks overdue. But watching Pip eat with obvious enjoyment made the hunger easier to bear. Pip watched everything Ray did with intense focus. When Ray worked on his personal data pad, Pip watched. When Ray organized his tools, Pip watched. On the 3rd day, Pip started helping. IT began small. Ray dropped a wrench while fixing his desk lamp. Before Ray could retrieve it, Pip picked it up with careful claws and offered it back. The next day, when Ray was repairing a circuit board, Pip pointed with 1 claw at a loose connection Ray had missed. By the 5th day, Pip was actively assisting, holding tools steady, retrieving parts from the storage locker, even spotting problems before Ray noticed them. The creature's intelligence was undeniable now. This was not animal training or clever mimicry. This was genuine understanding of engineering principles that Ray's work quality improved dramatically. Jobs that usually took hours were finished in half the time. His supervisor actually complimented him, something that had not happened in months. Other mechanics started requesting Ray specifically for difficult repairs, but success brought attention, and attention brought danger. Ray was researching on his datapad late one night while Pip slept curled on the bunk. He had been searching databases for any species matching Pip's description. The results were buried in historical files, marked with warnings and encryption. Star dragons. WIRMS. An ancient species that predated most galactic civilizations. Intelligent, powerful, nearly extinct. 500 years ago, a coalition of mining corporations and military powers had hunted them almost to extinction for their scales, their bones, their organs. Everything about a dragon was valuable. A single scale could power a starship. Bone dust could extend lifespans. Their blood had properties that science still did not fully understand. The genocide had been systematic and brutal. Survivors fled to deep space and vanished. Most historians believe the species was completely extinct. No confirmed sighting in over 200 years. Ray looked at Pip sleeping peacefully. A dragon. He was sheltering a baby dragon in his maintenance quarters on a failing space station. The implications made his head spin that if word got out, every hunter, collector, and corporate agent in 3 sectors would descend on this station. Pip would be worth more than the entire station itself. Worth killing for. Worth starting wars for. Ray closed his datapad and rubbed his eyes. He should report this. Should contact authorities. Should do the smart thing that would keep him safe and maybe even earn a reward. But looking at Pip, remembering those first moments of trust and hunger, Ray knew he could not. Would not. "What am I doing?" he whispered. Pip opened one golden eye and chirped softly, a sound that somehow conveyed reassurance. The next morning, the Brexian returned. Ray was walking back from the market with food supplies when he spotted 3 figures near the maintenance corridor entrance. The Brexian from before, plus 2 others. Mercenaries, judging by their armor and weapons. They were questioning a station worker, showing a hollow image of something. Ray ducked into a side corridor and took the long way back to his quarters. His heart raced. They were searching, asking questions. Eventually someone would talk. Someone would point them to the human mechanic who had protected a strange creature. He reached his quarters and locked the door. Pip sensed his fear immediately and stood up, alert. "We have a problem," Ray said. He explained what he had seen. Pip listened with that intense focus, golden eyes processing every word. Then Pip did something new, something that made Ray's breath catch. Pip stood on hind legs, wings spreading slightly, and made a complex series of sounds. Not chirps, actual words in a language Ray did not recognize, but somehow felt he should understand. Ancient, musical, powerful. The meaning came to Ray not through his ears, but directly into his mind. Protection offered, bond forming, trust given. Ray staggered back and sat on his bunk. "You can talk. Actually talk." Pip settled back onto 4 legs and chirped. The simpler sound felt like an apology for the shock. "Why did you not talk before?" Ray asked. Another complex series of sounds, translated directly into understanding. Testing, watching, searching for one who would help without knowing the value of what they helped. Searching for kindness given freely. "You were testing me," Ray said. "All that time in the alley, you could have spoken, could have asked for help properly. But you wanted to see if I would help anyway." Pip chirped confirmation. Ray laughed. It sounded slightly hysterical even to his own ears. "I fed a dragon my lunch. I smuggled a dragon into my quarters. I am protecting a dragon from mercenaries with exactly 0 weapons and even less of a plan." Pip moved closer and pressed against Ray's leg. Warmth radiated from his scales. Real warmth, but also something else. Connection. Bond. A promise that flowed both ways. "We are in so much trouble," Ray said. Pip chirped agreement. But somehow, sitting there with a dragon pressed against his leg and mercenaries searching the station, Ray felt less afraid than he had in years. Less alone, less lost. Whatever came next, they would face it together. The inspection happened on a Tuesday. Ray was installing a new coolant line in Docking Bay 12 when his supervisor called over the comm, "Castellan, get back to your quarters. Station administrator wants to do a random inspection. Something about regulation compliance." Ray's stomach dropped. Pip was in the quarters, currently the size of a small pony and impossible to hide effectively. 3 weeks had passed since the Brexian and his mercenaries started searching. They had been careful, but eventually luck runs out that he ran through the maintenance corridors. His hands shook as he unlocked the door. Pip was pressed into the corner behind the bunk, trying to make a creature that now had a 2-meter wingspan appear smaller. Golden eyes were wide with fear. "Into the storage locker," Ray whispered. "Quick!" Pip squeezed into the locker, folding wings tight. Ray shut the door just as footsteps approached. He tried to arrange himself casually, sitting at his desk like he had been reading. The door chimes sounded. Ray opened it. Station Administrator Fenris stood outside. The Quellan was a thin being with gray skin and 4 arms, usually buried in paperwork and regulations. Behind him stood the Brexian and his 2 mercenary friends. "Mr. Castellan," Fenris said in his formal tone, "these individuals have filed a complaint about illegal harboring of exotic fauna. I am required by station regulations to investigate." "I do not have any animals," Ray said. His voice stayed surprisingly steady. "Then you will not mind if we look around," the Brexian said, pushing past Fenris. The mercenaries followed. Ray's quarters were small enough to search in 30 seconds. One of the mercenaries moved toward the storage locker. That is my personal property, Ray said. You need a warrant to search that. Actually, station regulations allow for complete inspection during compliance checks, Fenris said apologetically. Please open the locker. Ray looked at the Quellan. Fenris had always been fair, if overly bureaucratic. A decent being trapped in a system that rewarded following rules over doing what was right. Administrator Fenris, Ray said carefully. If I open that locker, people are going to get hurt. Maybe killed. I am asking you, as one working being to another. Do not make me open it. Something in Ray's tone made Fenris pause. The administrator's 4 hands fidgeted with his datapad. Mr. Castellan, I cannot simply ignore regulations. Open it, the Brexian demanded. Or we will. The mercenary reached for the locker. Ray moved to block him. The other mercenary pulled a weapon. Everything balanced on a knife's edge. Then Pip made a choice. The locker door opened from inside. Pip emerged, standing at full height, wings spreading to fill the small quarters. No longer trying to appear small or harmless. Scales caught the light and blazed with iridescent fire. Golden eyes fixed on the intruders with ancient intelligence and rising power. The Brexian grinned and raised his weapon. Worth it. Fenris went completely still. His gray skin turned pale, almost white. His 4 arms dropped to his sides. He stared at Pip with an expression Ray had never seen on a Quellan face before. Recognition. Salt. Fear. Oh no, Fenris whispered. Oh no no no. The administrator stumbled backward. He bowed, so low his head nearly touched the deck plating. I did not know. I had no idea. I offer profound apologies for this intrusion. I did not know a keeper resided on this station. What? Ray said. What? The Brexian said. Fenris was trembling. He spoke in rapid, formal tones. The keeper bond. Ancient law that supersedes all local regulations. I apologize. I apologize profusely. Had I known, I would never have authorized this inspection. What are you talking about? The Brexian demanded. Fenris finally looked up. His voice was steady now, filled with the weight of regulations he actually knew. That is a dragon. A star dragon. And this human is bonded to it. Do you understand what that means? It means we are all rich, the Brexian said. It means if you harm either of them, you violate treaties older than your species, Fenris said. It means you just threatened a being under ancient diplomatic protection. It means you are so far outside legal bounds that I have to report this to Galactic Council immediately. The Brexian looked uncertain for the first time. Diplomatic protection? Fenris turned to Ray. His tone became almost reverent. When did the bond form? I do not understand what is happening, Ray said honestly. Pip made those complex musical sounds. This time, everyone in the room felt the translation ripple through their minds. 3 weeks ago. First feeding. Protection offered without knowledge of value. Bond chosen. Bond accepted. 3 weeks, Fenris breathed. You have been keeper for 3 weeks and did not know. Someone explained this to me in simple terms. Ray said. Fenris collected himself. Dragons bond with protectors. It happens maybe once every few centuries. They choose beings who show kindness without expectation of reward. Once bonded, keeper and dragon are connected for life. Your life, specifically, becomes as long as the dragon's life. You share in their strength. They share in your wisdom. Galactic law recognizes this bond as sacrosanct. You are effectively a diplomatic entity now. Ray sat down on his bunk. His legs would not hold him anymore. I just share my sandwich. You shared your sandwich with a starving dragon who was testing you, Fenris said. You passed a test that most beings fail. You proved yourself worthy. The Brexian started backing toward the door. This is insane. It is just a big lizard. Valuable, yes, but not worth all this legal trouble. Try to harm either of them and see what happens, Fenris said coldly. Dragons may be rare, but they still have allies. Powerful allies. And those allies take keeper bonds very seriously. The Brexian and his mercenaries left quickly. Fenris remained, still looking shaken. I need to file reports. Many reports. The Galactic Council will send representatives. So will the Dragon Enclave, assuming they still exist. This is unprecedented in my lifetime. After Fenris left, Ray sat in silence with Pip. The dragon settled on the floor, looking almost apologetic. You could have mentioned this earlier, Ray said. Pip chirped. The sound conveyed complicated emotions. Testing had to be complete. Bond had to form naturally. Knowledge would have changed behavior. So what happens now? Pip's response came in images and feelings rather than words. Delegation coming. Choices to be made. Life changing forever. But Bond true. Bond strong. Whatever comes, together. Ray looked at his tiny quarters. At his meager possessions. At the life he had built from the wreckage of his divorce. Small, safe, limited. He had been hiding here for 2 years, fixing engines and eating cardboard sandwiches, afraid to want anything more. Now everything was different. Now he was bonded to a dragon. Now his life would last centuries instead of decades. Now, the galaxy itself was taking notice. Ray should have been terrified. Instead, he felt something he had not felt in years. Possibility. They arrived 4 days later. 3 dragons in humanoid form walked through the docking bay like they owned the station. They probably did, economically speaking. Each one radiated power that made experienced pilots step aside without being asked. Ray watched from the observation deck as they approached. Administrator Fendris met them with full diplomatic protocols. Ray could see the Quellan bowing repeatedly. Then all of them turned and walked toward the maintenance section, toward Ray's quarters. Ray looked at Pip, who now barely fit in the small room. I guess this is it. Pip chirped reassurance, but Ray could feel nervousness through their bond. This mattered. This mattered to both of them. The knock came precisely on time. Ray opened the door. The 3 dragons had shifted to their true forms. Each was massive, easily 4 times Pip's current size. One was silver with blue undertones. One was deep red like cooling metal. One was black with gold highlights. Their eyes held centuries of life and wisdom. The silver one spoke in that same musical language Pip used. Direct translation flowed into Ray's mind. Greetings, Keeper. We are the delegation of the Elder Clutch. We have come to offer choices. Choices, Ray repeated. The red dragon continued. You bonded with Etherwing Stormcaller, last daughter of our clutch. This bond is recognized and honored, but you entered it without full understanding. We offer you release if you desire it. Financial compensation for your kindness. Safe return to your previous life. And if I do not want release? The black dragon's eyes gleamed. Then you accept fully. You become Keeper in truth. Your lifespan extends to match hers, potentially thousands of years. You gain strength, health, connection, but also responsibility, also danger. Not everyone welcomes our return to galactic society. Your return? Ray asked. The silver dragon shifted position. We have been watching from deep space for 5 centuries, waiting for signs that younger species had evolved beyond the greed that nearly destroyed us. Etherwing volunteered to test them, to search for proof that some beings still value life over profit. Ray looked at Pip. At Etherwing, you were testing everyone. How many beings did you ask for help? Etherwing made soft sounds. Meaning flowed clear. Hundreds. Stations, planets, ships. Hundreds of beings encountered. Most ignored. Some tried to capture. You alone shared freely. I just gave you half a sandwich, Ray said. That is precisely why it mattered, the red dragon said. You had little. You shared anyway. You expected nothing. You gained nothing, or so you thought. True kindness requires no reward. The black dragon stepped closer. But now you must choose with full knowledge. Remain bonded and enter our world. Accept changes you cannot imagine. Or walk away with our gratitude and generous compensation. Both choices are honored. Ray sat on his bunk. The dragons waited patiently. Etherwing pressed against his side, warmth radiating through his whole body. He thought about his life on the station, about the divorce that crushed him, about playing it safe for 2 years, too afraid to risk anything, too broken to want anything, about cardboard sandwiches and unpaid rent and fixing engines for beings who barely noticed he existed. Safe, small, limited, lonely. Can I walk through the station? Ray asked. Before I decide, the dragons agreed. Ray left his quarters and wandered the corridors. Etherwing followed at a respectful distance. The dragons remained behind, He walked past the market where he bought the apple, past the docking bays where he repaired ships, past the bar where workers complained about unpaid wages. Everything familiar. Everything safe. He found his supervisor in the main repair bay. The older man looked up from a fuel line. Ray, heard you have some big decision to make. News travels fast. Always does on stations. The supervisor put down his tools. You want advice? I guess. You've been fixing broken things your whole life, Ray. Engines, systems, relationships that were already past saving. Maybe it is time you built something new instead. Ray stared at him. I do not know if I am good enough for something new. Nobody ever does, the supervisor said. That is the point. You find out by doing it. Ray walked to the observation deck and looked out at the stars. Thousands of them, millions, more than he could count. He had dreamed once about flying out there, about being part of something bigger. Then life beat that dream out of him piece by piece. A commotion drew his attention to the market level below. A Teluvian worker was yelling at a small alien creature, begging for food scraps. As Ray watched, the Teluvian kicked the small being aside. Ray felt something hot flare in his chest. He moved without thinking, taking the stairs two at a time. By the time he reached the market, Etherwing was beside him. Hey, Ray called out. Leave it alone. The Teluvian turned. This does not concern you, human. I am making it concern me. Ray helped the small alien up. He bought food with his last few credits and gave it over. The alien looked at him with grateful eyes and scurried away. The Teluvian laughed. Wasting money on vermin. You are as stupid as they say. Ray looked at Etherwing. The dragon was watching him with pride in those golden eyes. Not because he was strong or brave or special, because he saw someone who needed help and chose to help anyway. Just like 3 weeks ago in the alley, he understood then. The bond was not about destiny or being chosen or being special. It was about being the kind of person who shared their sandwich with a hungry stranger. About staying that kind of person even when life beat you down. About believing that kindness mattered even when everything else said it did not. Ray walked back to his quarters. The dragons waited. He stood before them with Etherwing at his side. I accept, Ray said. Fully. Whatever comes. The silver dragon lowered her head in a gesture of respect. Then you're a keeper in truth, Ray Castellan. Your journey begins now. I do not know how to be what you need, Ray said honestly. You already are, the red dragon replied. You only need to keep being yourself. That night, they performed the ceremony. Ray did not understand all of it. Ancient words in dragon language, gestures that carried weight beyond meaning. But when it finished, he felt different. Stronger, more connected, like roots that had been shallow suddenly drove deep into solid ground. Etherwing curled beside him. Through their bond, he felt her true name for the first time. Etherwing Stormcaller, daughter of lightning and wind, last hope of a dying species, and she had chosen him. A broken-down mechanic who shared his lunch. Ray fell asleep that night, knowing his life would never be the same. Knowing challenges would come. Knowing he was probably going to fail more than he succeeded. But for the first time in years, he was not afraid of it. 6 months changed Ray more than the previous 34 years combined. He lived in the Dragon Enclave now, a hidden network of stations and habitats deep in uncharted space. The place was beautiful in ways that made his old maintenance quarters seem like a bad joke. But Ray missed the simplicity sometimes, missed knowing his place in the universe, even if that place was small and cramped. Learning dragon culture was like learning to breathe underwater. Everything was formal, layered with meaning, tied to traditions that predated human spaceflight. Ray stumbled constantly, said the wrong things, made social mistakes that would have been disasters if Etherwing had not been there to smooth them over. But he learned. The bond helped. Through Etherwing, he felt the rightness or wrongness of gestures, understood context that words alone could not convey. His mind worked faster now. His body healed from injuries within hours. He could feel Etherwing's presence constantly. Even when she was on the other side of the habitat, she was not Pip anymore. Etherwing was nearly full-grown, massive, and powerful. Other dragons treated her with respect due to the last daughter of the Elder Clutch. But to Ray, she was still the half-starved creature who bowed her head for half a sandwich. The Elder Council summoned him on a Tuesday. Ray was beginning to hate Tuesdays. They met in the Chamber of Scales, a vast space where light reflected off crystal walls in rainbow patterns. 12 elder dragons in humanoid form sat in a circle. Etherwing stood beside Ray, her presence a comfort. The silver dragon who had offered him choices months ago spoke first. Keeper Castellan, we have a problem. A megacorporation called Halion Industries is planning to strip mine the planet Virtus 3. Thousands of species will go extinct. 3 sapient species who lack political representation will lose their homeworld. Can you stop them? Ray asked that we could destroy their facilities, eliminate their leadership, force compliance through power. The Black Dragon's tone was grim. But such actions would turn the galaxy against us. We would become conquerors, not protectors. Everything we hoped to rebuild would be lost. So you do nothing. We do nothing, the Red Dragon confirmed. Unless you have an alternative. Ray thought about it. About his time on Orbital Station Gamma 7. About the workers who had no voice, no power, no way to fight back against beings who saw them as disposable. About how change never came from the top because the beings at the top benefited from things staying the same. I have an idea, Ray said slowly, but it requires me to leave the enclave. Etherwing made a concerned sound. Ray felt her worry through the bond. But also trust. Always trust. Explain, the Silver Dragon said. 3 weeks later, Ray stood in a maintenance bay on Orbital Station Kappa 9, wearing grease-stained coveralls and fixing a coolant pump. To everyone around him, he was just another mechanic. No one recognized him. No one knew what he was. Perfect. He worked quietly and listened. Workers complained about everything. Low pay, dangerous conditions, corporations that valued profits over lives. The usual problems of beings who had no power. Ray began talking. Casually. About Virtus 3. About what was going to happen there. About how corporations did whatever they wanted because no one stopped them. Someone should do something. A Brellan cargo hauler said. Someone is not going to help, Ray replied. We are the only someone's around. The idea spread slowly. Worker to worker. Station to station. Ray moved between facilities, always as just another mechanic. He talked about organizing, about strikes, about using the only power they had, their labor. Halion Industries relied on a supply chain that stretched across 3 sectors. Ships to transport equipment, stations to refuel them, workers to maintain everything. If that chain broke, their entire operation stopped. Ray found the weak points, talked to the right people, planted the right ideas. The strike began on a Monday. Maintenance workers on 6 stations refused to service Halion ships. Cargo haulers refused to transport mining equipment. Refueling stations suddenly had technical problems that would take weeks to fix. Halion executives threatened, offered bribes, tried to hire replacement workers. But Ray had built the network carefully. The workers held firm. The story spread. Independent journalists picked it up. Suddenly the galaxy was watching. Watching ordinary beings stand up to a megacorporation. Watching them win. Ray gave one interview. He kept it simple. No fancy words. No complicated arguments. Dragons are not here to save us, he said to the camera. They are not here to rule us or fight our battles. They are here to remind us that we can save ourselves. We're the ones who built this galaxy. We are the ones who let corporations buy our governments. We're the ones who forgot that some things matter more than profit. And we are the ones who have to fix it. The interview went viral. Other workers joined the strike. Politicians who had supported Halion suddenly remembered they serve voters, not corporations. Within a month, the Galactic Council voted to protect Virtus. 3. Ray watched the vote from a quiet bar on a small station. Etherwing sat beside him in a humanoid form, looking proud. You did it, she said. Her voice was musical even in this form. They did it, Ray corrected. I just reminded them they could. Later, standing on an observation deck overlooking Virtus 3, Ray and Etherwing watched the unspoiled planet turn slowly into void. Forests and oceans. Life that would continue. I was wrong about humans, Etherwing said. My kind thought we had to be powerful to matter. We thought strength was what made us special. But you taught me something different. What is that? That the most powerful thing is seeing someone who needs help and choosing to care. That is what makes humans special. Not your technology, not your expansion across the galaxy. The fact that you see a hungry stranger and share your lunch without asking what they are worth. That is the power that changes worlds. Ray thought about that morning 6 months ago, about sitting in a dark alley with half a sandwich, about a choice that seemed meaningless at the time. You taught me something too, Ray said. I thought I was too broken to matter, too small to make a difference. You show me that everyone matters. We just have to choose to act like it. His comm device chimed. Messages from across the galaxy. Other workers organizing. Other beings inspired by what happened. The ripple effect spreading wider. There's more work to do, Ray said. There always is, Etherwing agreed. But now we do it together. They stood there watching the planet spin. A dragon and a human. A bond formed over shared food and simple kindness. Proof that the smallest acts could change everything. Proof that sometimes the most extraordinary things begin with someone deciding to care about a hungry stranger in a dark alley between docking bays.